Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands in 1990. Now, I've done my first Tim Burton review with Sleepy Hollow the other day, and if you've seen that, you'll know that I absolutely loved it. I always have done, really. And it kind of just surprised me, on a rewatch, how much I did. How much it kind of lived up to what I remembered it to be. And Edward Scissorhands, though, has always been, since I saw it, has always been my favourite Tim Burton film. By far. I just haven't seen it. I hadn't seen it until now for many many years. I watched it quite a lot as a kid, and it's just a film that I thought I'd wait a couple of years again to see it, and then I just kept going, and I thought, this year, I need to actually pick it up now and actually rewatch it. And see if it's as as good as I remembered. If I love it just as much as I did, and I do. I think that this is far and away the best Tim Burton film I've seen, and it is his most kind of you can't really say with some directors what is the most popular film, because sometimes it's up and down. There's many different lists that have I have a couple of things at number one. Ed Wood for Tim Burton sometimes appears at number one. But this is an Ed Wood and things like that are the ones that usually do crop up at the top. And yeah, I think that this is definitely his best. I don't imagine seeing one that's better than this for me. And of course, 1990, which was a stunning year in film. Most people say Goodfellas is the best film of the year for 1990. I disagree with that, but Goodfellas is easily in my top 100 films. I think the number one film of that year is far and away the best, and it's not Goodfellas, and it's not this. But this film is absolutely stunning. It just really is something else. Wonderful work of art in every single way. Johnny Depp, his first kind of collaboration with Tim Burton. Of course, there's been many films now, some good, some bad. And this is definitely the best they've had. Tim Burton would consider this his favourite film that he made, really, and so would Danny Elfman. That he was involved in, because of course, Danny Elfman, composed the soundtrack for this film, and it's one of the most beautiful pieces, of film score you ever hear. It's stunning, and yes, I do agree that it does sound a bit like the Polar Express. If you think that, I'm definitely with that. It does sound like that. The Alan Silvestri score, but this score is just one of my favourite scores in film. It's stunning. Now, I saw it tonight, of course, on a rewatch, and just every single second of this film is just full of emotion, humanity, and this is a fantasy film. It's kind of a sci-fi film. It's a romance. It's kind of gothic, as always with Tim Burton films. And deals with many complex themes and issues. And it's kind of, this film is kind of a callback, really, to a lot of classic films. Frankenstein, of course, massive influence. And actually, even you could say some of the classic silence, classic horror films, not just Frankenstein, and also I would actually say some Chaplin stuff. Because the way that Johnny Depp's character of Edward Scissorhands kind of walks about and kind of his mannerisms are a bit like Charlie Chaplin, when he was the tramp character. So you've got many different influences this film has had and has taken from. Sorry, and Tim Burton, of course, along with Caroline Thompson would come up with a story. She would write the screenplay, and he would also co-produce, and he would direct, of course, as well. And it's just one of the most wonderfully creative and human, stories in cinema, I feel. And of course, cinema is not just about the concept and everything. Really, it's all about the execution. And this film, could not really have been executed better for me. It is a perfect film from me. I think that this is just so wonderful, fantastical, but also so powerful, and it's the themes that it explores are just so powerful, and done in such a way that it's it's very patient, the way that the film works, but it does deliver. Many people say, without getting into it too much, that the ending is a bit too depressing and stuff like that. I do not feel that. I think it's very hopeful. Personally, bittersweet, I would say. But the emotions I felt from that ending was unlike most films. But this film, yes, it's basically Johnny Depp plays Edward, and he's basically, you learn very early on that he's got scissors for hands, and it's basically to do with, of course, the inventor not finishing his work, on him, and you find out slowly over the film through different kind of flashbacks how that came about. I will not ruin, on some plot synopsises it ruins it, and stuff, but it's very very complex and everything. The way that that's told, it is stunning. The flashbacks, it's just beautiful, and it always gets placed at the right moment throughout to kind of you just kind of feel it's always at the right point that you get this information. But this film is just stunning. It's basically Johnny Depp, of course, is taken in by this Avon lady, and she brings him back to this place called Suburbia, and it basically into her family and everything, and he stays with them, and she kind of cares for him and stuff, and her daughter eventually comes into it. Kim, played by Winona Ryder, who is just a brilliant actress. She's wonderful, and she's great in this. This is one of her earliest works, and she's just great, and basically over time they form this romance, and very, very many things get in the way of it. Her boyfriend in the film as well. Everything gets in the way. It causes a lot of friction. Anthony Michael Hall played the boyfriend, and the main themes of the film, it deals with is isolation, self-discovery, all these different things, and just of course Johnny, just the way that the Edward Scissorhands as a character kind of develops over the film is just one of the most compelling pieces narratives I've ever seen in the cinema. And the key word here is really pathos, and just feeling, this sympathy from you, empathetic feeling as well, and just the emotions I felt when watching this. Very relatable, of course. He is this kind of this Frankenstein monster kind of thing, but it's just you can relate to everything in it, even though he is kind of this thing, because it's thoroughly human, and that's the thing. He's a character that just wants to kind of fit in, and you can, of course, many people can relate to that. Very very powerful stuff for me. Very personal film. Just the way that it deals with bullying and stuff like that, and isolation and everything. It's just wonderful, and it's always sincere. It's never done in a heavy-handed way at all, and Johnny Depp in this film, I always thought this is one of his absolute greatest performances, and Johnny Depp is well on form, a great actor, really great actor, definitely quite underrated at times. Now seeing it, after maybe 8 years, 9 years since I last saw it, this is definitely Johnny Depp's best performance, and just his best written character that he's played. But the performance is absolutely stunning. It's one of the best in cinema, I'd say. That's how far I'd go. It's just the range of emotions and the way that you feel this sympathy towards him throughout the entire film. It's just stunning, wonderful. Just the way he carries himself, the way he walks. Just every glance is perfect. The writing in this film is stunning. It's an absolutely wonderful script, very thought-provoking, and this is kind of a satire at times. It deals with different. It's kind of like a social commentary, and it kind of mocks, neighbourhoods and everything, people gossiping, stuff like that. The colours in this film is another thing to note. The whole all the cinematography in this film, some of the best in cinema. But it's what it is as well. The contrast between the gothic kind of mansion. And this suburbia, the pastely colours, very very bright colours and stuff. It's just wonderful, and I just think that's perfect how it transitions. It's kind of like along the lines of Wizard of Oz, where it goes from black and white to colour, that sort of thing, and you're in a different land. And it's kind of like this, Tim Burton is kind of known for his gothic kind of dark films. This one is probably one of his least gothic films, because really the only part is the mansion, and the original costume of Edward Scissorhands, before he gets the clothing. The rest of the films, you could say, is actually his least kind of gothic look to the film. You know, that dark tone and everything. It's very, very full of colour and everything, and pastely. Very, 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 light-hearted in that sense. But of course, this is a very, very powerful film, and you know, it's easily his most powerful film, most emotional. Within the first 20 minutes, you know, I get, you know, many different emotions from this film. Just as well, one of the key moments is when he enters the house for the first time. The key word here is wonder. You know, the sense of wonder throughout this film, and particularly these early on scenes, is another level, really. Just Tim Burton is just a genius here. He just the way that Johnny Depp as well just acts in this throughout. You know, the way he just simple things that he's just in awe of because he never discovered them yet, and it's so uplifting and so such a joy to experience this. It's like your experience, like the Wizard of Oz. You know, you're stepping into this this other land for the first time. It's like that, you know, and it's of course portrayed by many different things, and the combination of the direction from Tim Burton and, you know, all the colours, and then Johnny Depp. You know, it's just wonderful, and all the side characters in this film are great, absolutely stunning. I think just all the drama in this film works so well. You know, Anthony Michael Hall. You know, of course, he is a villain that you don't really like at all. You do hate him in that sense, but he's a great one, and, you know, and a great performance. Very, very different to what he played, for example, in The Breakfast Club. You know, completely different character, and of course he plays the part brilliantly. Winona Ryder, of course, as I've said, is stunning in this film. She is wonderful. The romance in this film is such a unique one. You know, it takes its time. It maybe just 50 minutes in, it starts to set in, really. You know, both ways, kind of thing. And it just, despite that, you know, despite there's not throughout the entire film, and it's quite a short film, it delivers one of the most powerful romances in cinema. You know, and it's just so unique the way that, you know, I won't ruin, but the way it plays out, and it's just stunning. You know, there's so many different things working in this film all at once that it's just wonderful. And but as I've said, the way Tim Burton's kind of portrays isolation is just another level, really. This is you know, I think this is even more effective in some ways than Taxi Driver in that sense, and I do prefer it. Maybe it's not quite a better film. That's open to debate. You know, not far off. But I think I connect with this film even more than Taxi Driver and films like that. This is just a stunning film, you know, and I think, yes, it is loved, but in some sense it's still underrated, I feel. A lot of Tim Burton's works are. But this really is one of the absolute finest films that I've ever seen. It's one of the most emotional, just beautiful and pure films. That's what it is. It's a pure film. You know, many say the ending's depressing and stuff like that. I just think it's pure. It's true to life. It's human, and it's got so many moments of uplifting nature. The ice dance scene is one of the most beautiful scenes in cinema. The whole ending act is just another level of filmmaking, really. It's just wonderful, and it's just a perfect ending. You know, I couldn't have imagined a better way to the final shots, really, for this film. It's just stunning, and you know, Dianne Wiest as well. She was great in this film, very warm. That's another thing. This film is just full of heart. You know, there's no denying that. It's just it's such a passionate film, you know, and everyone involved just absolutely wonderful. This is just one of my absolute favourite films of all time. You know, it used to be when I saw it, when I watched it quite a lot as a kid. And it's just one of the films that on a rewatch, you know, it's not changed. It's still one of my absolute favourites. Do I think it's one of the finest films I've ever seen? Yes. You know, I don't care. You know, I do think it is one of the finest films in cinema. I think it's just one of the most creative, human films I've ever seen. Johnny Depp's performance easily his best for me. Winona Ryder, one of her best. All the supporting cast, stunning. Vincent Price, even, you know, in his small role, wonderful. And it's just one of the greatest narratives I've ever seen. Cinematography, soundtrack, it's just absolutely overwhelming with emotion. Danny Elfman, stunning. You know, he's done some great scores, and of course Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man trilogy. The scores for them are absolutely mind blowing, and this is no exception. This is just again one of the finest in cinema. Just beautiful, you know, and epic as well. It's just stunning, and every moment is it's used. The soundtrack is just the perfect timing. The editing is stunning. You know, there's just so many shots in this film that are some of the best I've ever seen in film, really. But the editing as well is just so wonderful, and just every moment, you know, throughout the film, every act, every scene just works perfectly to deliver, you know, what Tim Burton had realised, you know, really, and all involved had realised. It's just wonderful. Easily Tim Burton's best, and you know what, it was in consideration for my absolute highest rating, you know, bonus tier. Tier 1, 100% plus tier 1 is, you know, basically the highest praise I can give a film. But of course, if you know my channel, you know that there's a tier S, and that's basically bonus. You know, very rarely does a film get into that kind of mark. You know, and this was in consideration, and now I've decided I'd give this film 100% plus tier S. That means for me it's one of the magnum opuses of cinema. Yeah, I honestly think that it really is. It's well into my top 50. Just one of the greatest films in cinema for me, and full of emotion, full of heart, full of wonder. You know, it's got comedy in the film. It's just got thoroughly compelling, absorbing narrative that I connected to on every single level. It's one of my favourite fantasy films. You know, it's kind of a sci-fi at times as well, and you know, it's just one of my favourite romances easily. You know, Johnny Depp plays this role to perfection, and this character of Edward Scissorhands is easily one of the most compelling and unique in cinema. One of the most sympathetic characters, related to everything that happened in this film, and of course it's great social commentary as well. Masterful. This film is perfect. It's perfect in tone, in the way it gives you emotion. Everything, the pacing, every single element of filmmaking for me in this film is pitch perfect. This is just one of the greatest for me ever. You know, it's probably my second favourite film of 1990 actually. And there's so many great films that came out that year. So yeah, I do prefer to Goodfellas. That's kind of a spoiler. Of course, both are masterpieces, but this is it's just a wonderful film. It kind of reminds me of E.T. as well, in that sense. Absolutely perfect, but beyond that, you know, gets my absolute highest rating. And I believe only 5 other films that I've reviewed on my channel have got this so far. So this is the 6th one, and that takes something to get that rating. You know, I've kind of extended it a little bit, that bracket, since, you know, a couple months ago, but this is definitely in there. You know, it's just one of the finest films in cinema. If you haven't seen it, check it out. You probably won't be disappointed, and if you have, tell me what you think in the comments. But this is just a film that's very, very emotional for me. Very personal film. Everyone involved, just wonderful, you know, everything. Tim Burton, genius, and easily for me his best film, and I don't think that will ever change really. Certainly not the way he's going, you know, over the recent years. But yes, thanks for watching my review, and more Tim Burton reviews will be coming soon, and this one is just wonderful. One of the magnum opuses for me, and yeah, thanks for watching my review of Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands.